Welcome, welcome, brave souls, to a journey of transformation that promises to inspire, challenge, and uplift your spirit. Today, we dive into a remarkable story of Daryl Dittmer, entrepreneur, podcaster, and author whose life has been a beacon of hope and resilience. In this episode, you'll receive invaluable insights into transformative power of humility and the importance of being teachable, forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, and living in service to others. Daryl shares how acknowledging his limitations at a young age unlocked a life filled with growth and purpose. You'll learn about the foundation of daily transformation through gratitude, which shifts our focus from self-centeredness to recognizing a higher power and God at work in our lives. Join us as we explore these powerful themes and discover how Daryl's story can inspire you to embrace your own path with courage and grace. Let's walk this transformative journey together, supporting, uplifting each other. You and I are capable of transformation and living spiritually brave. I will see you on the inside. Hello from the Pacific Northwest. This is Kristen from KristenWambach.com, and you're listening to Interviewing Jesus podcast. Answer me this. How does a Baptist farm girl from Oregon stumble upon the mystical nature of Christ, the love of God? If you're like me, Jesus has redefined what you used to say yes to. Join me and my guests on a mystical journey. But before we talk about the spiritual woo-woo, you need to know I am totally sold out to Jesus. It's amazing what the love of God reveals. Hello and welcome, family. How are you today? And how is your journey on living spiritually brave? Well, let me give a warm welcome to our guest today, and we're going to have a really wonderful conversation. Daryl Dittmer. You may know Daryl as a savvy entrepreneur, a podcaster, and a fresh face in the world of authorship. But there's so much more to his story that we're going to dive in today. He's been walking the path of sobriety for decades, and today we will hear nuggets of gold on how he turned his life around from hitting rock bottom to achieving dreams beyond imagination. Daryl's journey is like a beacon guiding anyone ready to embark on their own spiritual and brave adventure. Let's dive into his story and ask some really good questions, and we can take a first step, a 10th step, 100th step, or 1,000 steps towards transformation. Welcome, Daryl.
Thank you, Kristen. I really appreciate you having me on. Joy to be here.
It is. It is so much fun. Would you please introduce yourself to our audience and share where you're speaking from?
Sure. As you mentioned, my name is Daryl Dittmer, and I am most currently, an author and a podcaster, and quite honestly, a student of life. And I am coming to you from the mountains of North Georgia, USA.
Georgia, USA, Georgia. I have not been to your lovely state. I'd like to. I'd like to, but I have not been there. Well, thank you and welcome, welcome. So in Daryl's newest book, When You Stop Fighting, the road you are on is your own asphalt. I found a couple of paragraphs that I am going to frame our conversation today. So I'll do a little bit of reading, a little bit of your statement, then I will pop a question out from there. So, listeners, you got your ears on, pay attention. This is going to be so much fun. Your first statement that just jumped off the pages to me, it says, it doesn't matter who we are, where we were born, what may be our starting point in life, or whether we're sober or not sober. We have a responsibility to learn, grow, pay attention, and take risks. We can be a useful member of society, develop and flourish as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual beings, and acquire skills that are valuable to ourselves and others. Now, Jesus compared the kingdom of heaven to the parable of a mustard seed, that little tiny seed that grew up to be larger than all the other seeds in the garden. So, small beginnings can lead to great outcomes. How has your own starting point shaped your journey so far? And how can you nurture that growth despite obstacles?
I love the question, Kristen. I do because many times, and myself included, and I've been on this, the wagon of life for a few decades, and the wagon of, doing my best to understand life and where I fit in all these areas of life, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional. And for a long time, what I have found over the years is the best place to start is from a position of humility. And it doesn't necessarily mean, some people equate humility with humiliation. It's not the same thing.
Mhm.
Humility, as it was explained to me a long time ago, is another word for teachable. And how do I get teachable? Well, sometimes I get teachable by being shown over and over, sometimes over and over again, that I don't know, that I don't have the answers, that I'm allowed to say, wow, I don't know what to do next. And I came to that point in my life, and I was lucky. I was 19 years old when I was confronted with that, and I was faced with the prospect of going into a rehab center, drug and alcohol rehab, and I was scared to death. I was scared to death, and I had a religious upbringing,
Mhm.
and I was calling on someone to help me, but I remember December 31st of 1984. I was at a New Year's Eve party, and I was 3 days from going into a treatment center, and I was around, I'm going to say, somewhere between 100 and 200 people. It was a lot of people, a big party. And I was the loneliest and most lost and most scared I'd ever been in my whole life. And the question came to my being, I wonder what would happen if I wasn't here anymore, meaning I didn't know if I wanted to be on this planet anymore. And from that point, and it's a long journey. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of doing. But that point was the point where I believe, whether I knew it or not, it flipped. I started to be able to say, I just don't know. And I started to become humble slash teachable. And I was ready to be shown. And I've been shown for the rest of, the balance of the last 40 or so years. And it's been a wonderful unfolding, and it's been, sometimes I get my butt kicked, and many times over the years, and that's just part of it. That's where we have to start from. Sometimes we just have to get our butts kicked, and that's where I started, and it was the best place for me to start because I started to listen.
Today, as you think about who you are today, what is the first framework that you call on every day? What is it for to find that teachable, to set yourself up to be teachable every day? What is the first thing that you do?
Gratitude. Gratitude is the foundation, I believe, of knowing that it's not all about me, knowing that I'm not the source. I'm not the one that I need to say thank you to. I'm not the one that needs to be patting myself on the back. If left to my own devices, I found out how that goes. And that doesn't go very well. And so relying on God, or, to me, whatever somebody wants to call that power greater than themselves, I call it God. But to be able to be grateful and to say thank you, as opposed to, I need this and I need that and I need that and I need that. I don't know what's best for me. Something out there does, and I am grateful that something out there knows what I need and when I need it, and it helps me along, as long as, and this is really important for me, as long as I'm putting in the effort and I'm trying. If I'm not trying, I can't expect much.
I do like your statement there. If I'm not trying, I can't expect much. So I'm going to jump back into that ongoing statement here. And you said in your book, it says the absolute best thing I can do for the world, for my country, my community, my friends, my family, and myself is get my shit together and learn how to be happy, productive, strong minded, wise, independent, self reliant, and a problem solver. It may be hard to hear. Being hard to hear doesn't diminish the fact that it's true. I either improve and grow as a human being in all facets of life, or I diminish and flounder. A simple program for complicated humanity. I love what you tagged at the end here. Experience has taught me the key to an effective and happy life is to put myself in a position where I can be of service to others, not a burden to others. Sometimes truths are like seeds planted in that rocky soil, hard to accept, yet capable of growing strong if we care for them. That's the trying. What challenges do you face in embracing these truths on a daily basis, and how can we nurture ourselves to bring understanding and change?
I think the title of my book, When You Stop Fighting, right? Or When I Stop Fighting, either way.
Mhm.
So I got involved in the 12 steps when I was 19 years old, and I went into treatment, and they took us to 12-step meetings, and et cetera, et cetera. I got a sponsor, which is really, it's a mentor.
Mhm.
And I grew up fighting life and fighting myself and fighting problems and wrestling with everything, and no pain, no gain, and you're not hurt if there's not a bone sticking out, all that sort of stuff. That's how I grew up. And that was just part of it. So that's what I was bringing to the table based on the way that I was raised. My dad was a tough dude. My mom was tough. It just is what it is. And so my mentor, he watched me struggling, and I said, hey, can you help me with this stuff? And he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And it shook me. It shook me at that moment, but it's been obviously shaking me for the next 40 years, because I wrote 2 books with that title, When You Stop Fighting and When I Stop Fighting. But that's really it. I can be my own worst enemy when it comes to life, and I can be the one who decides not to work, or I can be the one who decides to do the work, or I can be the one who decides not to be grateful, or I can practice gratitude, or I can be the one who's not teachable and thinks they know everything, or I can be the one who's teachable. So it's always me. It's always, what am I willing to do and what am I going to do to improve, as opposed to wait for things to improve around me, because that one doesn't happen. They don't just improve because I'm sitting on the couch hoping that they're going to improve. And I believe that's the way it works, and at least that's the way it has worked for me. I'll say one more thing about that. There was a time, and this talks about the struggles of my younger years. And sober or not, through your 20s, it's a struggle. Into your 30s, it can be a struggle. That's just part of life. That's just the way it goes until you start figuring some things out. But there was a time in my life when all I thought was, oh man, what's going to happen next? That sort of despair. And now in my life, All I say is, I can't wait to see what's going to happen next because things have gotten so cool. And and I think that's really what we can look forward to. We don't have to live a life of, oh man, what's going to happen next? We can change that tune, and that's by doing the right things for ourselves, and that's also by doing the right things for others.
Mhm. I love that answer. That's really good. And hearing you stop fighting, and I was attracted to your title. So I'm pretty high performance, kind of high expectation gal. Sometimes when I was reading your books, I just went, I see myself in that, even in all the good things to move forward, the big dreams, the big visions, God speaking to me and God doing amazing things. I still find myself, you would use the word pushing, but it is a type of fighting that I would do. Do you have any suggestions for me?
As far as the pushing, in my experience, because I'm a nut job. I can just go and go and go and go and go. And one of the things that really helped me is, well, two things that really helped me from that perspective, because I can relate to it, is there's three things I do in the morning, regardless of anything else. And you can add a fourth in there, but I'll try to keep it short. I have a breathing practice that allows me to slow myself down, slow my mind down, slow my body down, slow my heart rate down, just slow everything down. It's probably about 20 minutes in the morning.
Mhm.
And then I meditate. And that's just quiet. That's just, I have a mantra, but that's really just to focus the mind. And I do those two things. This one isn't included, but if there's a little breeze, sometimes I just sit there with my eyes closed and I feel the breeze, and it feels like, and if I'm right there with the breeze, it feels like somebody's pulling a silk sheet across my skin. It's the most amazing thing to just be there in that moment. But that's not included in those two things. That's a bonus. That's a bonus round.
Thank you, God.
The third one is I practice gratitude, and I carry it with me every day, but I practice it and I say thank you for my wife and my parents, who are both deceased, and my brother and sister, and the people in my life, and my mentors, and for life, and for allowing me to see and to breathe and all of those things. And I do those things every single day. And that's what helps me. Sometimes I need to slow down, and that's what helps me slow down. That's what keeps me from getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, because I have a great idea, and just going until it's 9 o'clock at night, because I have to do something to just slow that down a little bit.
I love it. Thank you for the reminder. Yes, just slow down. As my husband would say, Kristen, lighten up,
Mhm. Yeah.
lighten up. Me, just kind of like, all right, I need to redirect my own expectations of myself.
Mm.
That's how I would word it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love the breathing. It's wonderful.
Mm.
Breathing's wonderful. And oh yes, that fabric of the unseen we call wind that comes across and literally tangibly touches our body is
Beautiful.
it is it is, and we can be so thankful for that.
Yeah. The moments.
Yes, yes. You took a definition of principle and you shared it in your book. And the definition is this: a fundamental truth or proposition that serves as the basis of a system of belief or behavior. And then you added your own question mark on the end. It says, I also take issue with this definition because it fails to tell the entire story. How important is it to stop fighting with your story and begin to paint a belief or behavior system that we're in agreement with?
I was handed a box, and this is metaphorical, a box of stuff when I was a kid. And they said, here's what you're allowed to believe. Here's what you're allowed to believe. And it included religion, included manners, it included a whole bunch of things that, here you go, man. This is your stuff, because this is what we were taught to believe, and this is what our parents were taught and their parents were taught. Everybody was taught this is what you do. And when I got sober, and I tried to do those things until I started drinking and doing drugs and started going down this wormhole of destruction to myself and to those whose lives I touched. And so I started going way away from all the things that I was taught. You know, when people would say honesty and you got to tell the truth and you got to, all these things. And here's what you got to do. And I started going away from those things. I became a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And that's literally what I became. And so I got sober and I said, I'm going to, and I didn't say this to myself, but this is what happened over the course of years. I'm going to jettison and rebuild what I believe based on my life, based on my experiences. And over the course of time that worked. And part of the importance in that is that I can adopt principles in my life. And people say, well, honesty, yeah, everybody knows honesty, but honesty isn't me lying to you. Honesty is me not lying to me.
I love it. Yes.
And telling myself things that aren't true and saying, oh, it's so wonderful when it's not. Just it's okay for it not to be. Mm-hmm. It's okay to struggle. It's okay to have bad days. And I think that's where the fight comes in. And that's where the fight came in for me in my life in many ways. And as I was getting sober, I was thinking, well, I've been sober for 9 months. I'm not supposed to feel bad anymore. I'm not supposed to have difficult times. Well, yeah, you are. You're supposed to have life. You're supposed to have what happens and whatever that is. And there are many things that I can construct and build myself with to withstand those difficult things. And it's not even as well, it is withstand, but at some point it becomes, it's just a life of stepping stones. It's a life of lessons. It's a life of things for me to learn. And whether they're difficult or not so difficult, I need to continue to level up. I feel like that's what we were put here for. I was put here to end the journey in a very different place than when I started the journey and inside of me. And I'm not talking about outside of me. I'm talking about inside of me. And that's the work. I believe that's the work. And that's the journey. And paying attention to not the end, like, oh, hey, the end is all that matters. It's not the end that matters. It's every step along the way. And those are the beautiful moments, whether they're difficult or not. We always look back and we say either that wasn't so bad or, man, I learned a lot going through that. And that's the coolest thing about life to me.
We do learn a lot because we adopt being teachable inside of us.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
it.
I don't know that there's a substitute for being teachable. I think it was one of the old Stoics, and I know a lot of people have talked about it over time, but Epictetus, one of the old Stoics that said, it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. And I think that is, talk about nailing it, right? That nails it.
I agree. Yeah. It's like, all right, we can put that on our cornflakes in the morning.
Exactly.
I even date myself by saying cornflakes.
I was a big fan. Yeah. Big fan.
Goodness. Yeah.
Or Cheerios, right? I don't know.
Cheerios. Yeah. We weren't allowed to have any of that sugar cereals. Hell, no.
Right.
No, none of that. No.
Shredded wheat.
Yeah. All right, we could go back to old homework, but I do honor your mom. She had 9 brothers.
My grandmother had 9 brothers.
Had 9 brothers.
Yeah.
I have 3 brothers and I raised 4 sons. So I just went, oh,
wow.
I could hang out with her.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You guys could hang out. She came from Harlan County, Kentucky, which is a tough place anyway. And she was what they would say then she was a very tough bird. No doubt.
So as we move through your statement here, it says it's It's understanding that life is difficult and that it will include anxiety, fears, and grueling times. These demanding and trying times are all part of the process of maturing, growing, and improving. How we face those times and move through those challenges is how our belief system and hence our future is ultimately shaped. In serving others, we often find our greatest joy. How can you position yourself? How can we position ourselves as a vessel of service? And what ripples does this create in our own life?
My belief is that there's a lot of people out there trying to save the world, right? There's a lot of people out there
Yeah.
trying to save the world. And we're not going to save the world. We're going to save ourselves, and then we can improve the world. And that's what I truly believe is we go do the work ourselves, and we jump in, and we find ways to improve ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And I can't leave any of those off, because if I leave any of those off, I'm taking a huge chunk out of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking a huge chunk out of being better. And so I think that's the challenge, and that's the hardest thing to do. It's very easy to say they need to get better, or that needs to get better, or they need to improve, or why are they doing this, or why are they doing that, right? But it's really difficult to look in the mirror and say, how can I improve? And I look at improvement as, am I able to forget about myself long enough, because we're always thinking about ourselves. Am I able to forget about myself long enough to give a smile to the cashier, to strike up a conversation with the person next to me who's pumping gas,
Mm-hmm.
to give a smile to someone on the sidewalk that could make their day because they might be having a terrible day? Can I improve myself to the point where I do those things, as opposed to, sitting around wondering what's wrong with everybody else? And if I can get myself to do those things and forget about myself and help the world in those simple ways, I am making the world a better place.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I love it. I love that. Yeah. It's so important to look outside yourself, but in the activities like the cashier, the person pumping gas, person on the walking the street. And sometimes I notice I go, you can walk by a person in the grocery store and they won't even give you eye contact because they're so closed
Wrapped
off.
up.
They're closed off. And I pass them and I usually always pray for them, but I go, "How sad that the day or life is so heavy that you don't have an expectation for the common man to greet them." I mean, your community, you live. If you're shopping, your community. It's so good. M This podcast named after you know who, Jesus, interviewing him, so he's pulling a question that is, written in the halls of history. So asked of Jesus in Matthew 18:21 says, "How many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me?" And Jesus responded, "Up to 7." On my own personal journey, forgiveness of self is a daily medicine for me. And my learning point is changing it from being medicine to becoming a vitamin.
Mhm. That's better.
How has forgiveness become a supplement in your life?
It's absolutely crucial. And I had to, as you mentioned, Kristen, I had to start with learning to forgive myself, learning to forgive myself for the things that I did that were harmful to other people. And I did a lot of those things. And I went back and I made amends to a lot of those people. And I said, I'm sorry. And I didn't repeat those actions. And I started to get better. But I think forgiving others is a natural extension of forgiving ourselves. And for me, there's a caveat in a certain sense, because there are toxic human beings in this world. There are people who, if you have them in your life, they're going to detract from your life or detract from your family, or they're just not the right people for my life at this particular time. So forgiveness to me means I can forgive, but I don't have to have them in my life. And I think it's really crucial to understand that I can wish them all the love and beauty and wonderful life that I can possibly muster. And I wish these people those things, but for me to be my best, and for me to be best for the people around me, and for my family, et cetera, there are certain people that I need to forgive, but also have them be at a distance, and make that a crucial part of taking care of me.
Hmm. I agree. Very important. So I'm going to put I'm desiring a life application story on our journey of forgiveness, which most of us that are listening to this are walking that path and they're somewhere down the journey a bit. Sometimes Jesus asks us to go extend forgiveness or ask forgiveness, and even at times ask for, is there anything of a restitution that we need to do to make amends for what we have done? But the times seem to be so difficult is when the individuals do not receive your forgiveness. Do you have anything that you could say? Because I mean, it's hard because you've gone through a journey of healing, and now you're being brave in that healing and doing your best. And then when it's not received, meaning we're not expecting to give it back, but it's plain old not received. How do we deal with that?
Well, the thing about, we talk a lot about boundaries these days, right? And boundaries, we used to say, you teach people how to treat you. That's what it used to be when it was, that we didn't call it boundaries back then, but we called it, you teach people how to treat you. And the thing that I have to understand and carry in my life is boundaries are not for them. They're for me. The boundaries are not constraints I place on other people. They're for me. And they're for me keeping my side of the street clean. And they can have all the, dirt and refuse and cans and bags and whatever they want on their side of the street, but I'm going to keep my side of the street clean. And that's this maturity, emotional maturity that we're talking about. And when it comes to forgiveness, I can only keep my side of the street clean. And I am not responsible for whether or not or how they accept it. And I don't need them to accept it for it to be forgiveness.
Mhm.
And that's, what did they say about anger or non-forgiveness? It's about, drinking poison and thinking it's going to hurt the other person.
Yeah.
It's not. It only hurts me. So if my side of the street's clean, they can do with their side of the street whatever they like. And that's just, there's a lot of hard truths in this life, and that's one of them. That is one but I think it's crucial to understand that distinction.
Great description and boundaries. I'm going to jump in a little bit deeper here. When it moves super close to home, and yes, you're aware of the boundaries, how do you deal with it when it feels like a physical hurt? How do you remove the physical hurt from literally they say your muscle memory or your body? How do you do that?
I have a lifetime of physical hurt, of things that have been either done to me or I did to myself, or emotional hurt or whatever it is. And I feel like the best way that I've been able to release these things, and it wasn't that long ago, my wife and I sometimes will get up at, say, 4 o'clock in the morning, and we'll go sit on our deck and look at the stars. We live up in the mountains and the sky is just huge. And we'll look for shooting stars. And sometimes when I'm out there, I will see a shooting star and I'll say, hey, Mom. And my mom died back in 2001. And then I'll go a little deeper into that feeling of my mom,
Mhm.
and just sort of communing with her and talking to her and thanking her and really feeling her. And sometimes I'll start to sob. And I've done that on numerous occasions, and I've done it with my dad, and he's been gone for a long time now. And so to me, I have to let things come out, and I can't just everything. I can't just take the hits. I can't take the bullets. I can't take the harm all the time. I have to let it out, and I have to move it through and let it flow out of me. And there's times, I always wanted to be a tough guy. I found out, I was just a scared little kid. So I'm fine with, all of these saying these things. I'd be watching like America's Got Talent, and I'd be so happy for one of the contestants. They did such a good job. I'd just start tearing up. And people look at me like, well, dude, you're kind of a tough guy. I'm like, I'm really not. I might look like it now, but I love to feel, and I love to let these things bubble up inside of me. And I think that's one of the best ways that we can release some of that, physical harm, if that's what we want to call it.
That was a wonderful answer. That's great word pictures of the practicality of you were with your wife. So you have community, you have togetherness. Somebody who's experiencing with you, and then you're out there in nature and letting nature actually come and minister to you, and then having a conversation in that and how nature is ministering to you from the cosmos. Was lovely.
Mm.
I love it. I love the word picture. It's wonderful. And I also honor you for giving yourself permission to feel.
Thank you.
As a woman who is surrounded in testosterone, I love that you give yourself permission to feel.
Thank you. I think it was crucial. I think it was crucial for me to move past, a fairly tough upbringing, and being tough on myself and expecting a lot of myself. And I still expect a lot of myself. But the reason I expect a lot of myself today is not because I'm trying to prove something. It's because I know I've been given capabilities that I need to utilize. And I'm grateful for those gifts. And so I want to use those gifts. And so for me to get to that point in my life took feeling and took, allowing. It's one of my favorite words in the English language is allowing. I have to allow life to flow through me. And it's beautiful when I don't stop it and stuff it down and stem that flow, because the flow is what keeps us moving forward.
Thank you. Where can our listeners connect with you and locate your books?
The best place to find my books is on Amazon, and you can type in either When I Stop Fighting or When You Stop Fighting, or my name, Daryl Dittmer, and those will show up in Amazon. And the other place to find my books, I do journals. There's a couple journals behind me, but the titles on the front of my journals are Stop Stopping Yourself, Rewrite Your Life Story, just little reminders that we can change. I'm a big fan of writing. I think writing is one of the most healing things that I've ever done. And I don't have to be good at it. Just write. And it's transformative. So there's also journals on my website, if there's any interest in those. And I feel like those are all a big part of the healing process. And the website is Daryl Dittmer, DarylDittmer.com.
Excellent. And listeners, you know that all of that information and direct links to Daryl will be on the show notes. Now, before we go, we were talking about a call to action, something that we can place our hands to. And so what I was thinking, would you lead us in one of your breathing techniques? And we could just imagine joining you sitting out on your deck under the open sky, and all of a sudden the falling star drops down. And what is it that we're releasing in the breathing? Would you lead us in something like that?
I would. Yes, I would. I love that question. I've never been asked that before, and that's pretty cool, Kristen. So there are a number of the breathing technique I use is called pranayama, and it's an old like an Ayurvedic breathing technique. And there are several parts to it. But the first part is called ujjayi breath, which is, and anyone who's done yoga may be familiar with ujjayi breath. What it is you constrict your throat and you breathe, and this is one of the things they say in Ayurveda. The mouth is for talking and eating, the nose is for breathing. And so you breathe in through your nose and out through your nose, but I do it on 5-second intervals. So if you'd like to start with me, and it's constricting your throat a little bit, breathing in through the nose, keeping that throat constricted and breathing out. And we do it to a 4 or a 5 count. And within 4 or 5 breaths, you can feel yourself start to settle down. And one of the keys to this is paying attention to the breath coming in and out, maybe just feeling it on the tips of your nostrils, so that's where your focus is on the nostrils. So we'll begin. Breathing in to a count of 5. Constrict the throat, breathe out to a count of 5. It should be audible. In to a count of 5. Feel it in your nostrils, in. And out. One more in. And wonderful. That's beautiful. How'd that feel?
Good.
It brings the heart rate down significantly. It's quite amazing.
And I love what you said. It should be audible. You're breathing, that the force may not be the right word, but to make it audible, there's some pressure on it, on the exhale.
And in the throat, as you constrict the throat, you can feel that and feel the audible nature to it in the throat, which is a really cool thing. And I usually do that for a few minutes a day, and then I go into the rest of the breathing practices, which entail a number of different things. But it's calming, soothing, empowering, rejuvenating, all of those things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Daryl, for joining us today.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. I loved it.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, family. Wasn't that just a delightful episode? What did you learn? I know. I love it how Daryl is so frank and refreshing. And I learned a new gold nugget about boundaries in my life, especially when we're walking in forgiveness and trying to relate to those people around us. Did you? Oh, it was so wonderful. Make sure you head to the show notes. I have all the links that you can connect with Daryl and also the breathing that he shared with us today. It was wonderful to be able to share this time with you today. Thank you for being here. I will talk to you again next week. Bye now.